Overall, the game improves over Crash 2 in almost every way. Is it the magnum opus? Well, there could have been some smoothing out with some of the vehicle sections like the motorbike and—
Nice job, cutting it, hero!
Until next time, we'll be going over the finale of the Naughty Dog era. CTR, Crash Team Racing.
After 3 successful Crash Bandicoot games, Naughty Dog felt like they needed to end their tenure with Crash on a celebratory note. Or at least, that's what I liked to think. In reality, Crash Team Racing started development soon after Crash Bandicoot 2 was done, with the team pitching a racing game with several block-headed characters. They introduced this to Sony, and they were basically like,
Alright, Naughty Dog wants to introduce a new racing game. What do you guys think?
They've got us
covered.
Kid,
Right, so is it a yes or a no? Yes, but make it about Crash. Nice thinking, Cadet. A Crash Bandicoot kart racing game.
and sure enough, with 16 to 18 team members, Naughty Dog managed to make it one final hurrah for Crash. For upon release, the game was met with a very positive reception across the board, with many critics noting that the game did really well when it came to mastering the mechanics and execution of a kart racing game. However, they also noted that it didn't add anything new to what Johnny Liu of Game Revolution called a tired genre. IGN's Doug Perry noted that once you get past the insanely capitalistic smile of Crash, the game is rock solid in playability and graphics. Hell, it's a 4-player kart game that's on the PlayStation. Isn't that enough? I mean, not only that, but none of the problems of the other kart games even exist in this one. So what's all the fuss about? If you want a pure party game, and the best game on PlayStation or Nintendo, for that matter, get Crash Team Racing. Jeff Gertzman from GameSpot stated that Crash Team Racing may seem like just a Mario Kart clone, and with the exception of an additional mode or two and a superior track design, it is. But it's a great Mario Kart clone, and it succeeds where the likes of Mega Man, Bomberman, Diddy Kong, the Chocobo, and even Mario himself have failed. CTR has the staying power to convert people who haven't ever liked a mascot racing game, and it will definitely please Mario Kart fans with its many tracks and options. So, generally speaking, critics were very positive towards Crash Team Racing.
But let's face it, those are game journalists. How trustworthy are they anyway? So, CTR. Is it the masterpiece that everyone says it is, or does it all discombobulate in the end? Well, only one way to find out.
Get ready to race for the fate of your planet!
Said game opens with the introduction of an alien named Nitrous Oxide, who challenges the population of Earth, or at least a Crash Bandicoot cast, to a race. If he wins, he would turn the entire planet into a concrete parking lot. If he loses, he would leave Earth unscathed. Here's a fun fact. Did you know that Naughty Dog added Oxide in order that people would become alienated from the Crash Bandicoot series? Jason Rubin literally says that he wanted to make fans think that by adding an alien as a villain, Crash would basically jump the shark and they would never look at it again. Well, as they always say, even when you're trying to fail, you always succeed. More on that later. Well, anyway, for the most part, CTR's story is simple enough, but the presentation carries it through. There are little details like Polar reading a self-help book backwards, or Tiny just crushing the car with his bare fists, or Cortex laughing. Wait, Cortex? Wasn't he a baby in the Cretaceous period the last time we saw him? So how did he... is CTR canon or not? What is this series' timeline?
Oh, these existential questions that keep me up at night.
Well, it's no big deal. Naughty Dog probably figured no one would care. The overall plot, while simple, gives a certain amount of weight to the adventure mode players partake in. The opening and ending scenes, as well as his boss intro, are the only points in the game that Oxide appears in. Yet, he makes such a presence. The bosses mention him a handful of times, each of them warning you that Oxide is 10 times worse than what they had to deliver. So even though Oxide barely appears in the game, He's still there, watching you from afar, waiting for that final showdown. You can even go over to his boss garage in the second hub to remind you of his presence. Sure, maybe initially, Crash Team Racing doesn't seem to have a story that one would take very seriously. Turning Earth into a space parking lot doesn't sound too terribly threatening to me, but because Naughty Dog presented it in a way that raised the stakes, Oxide felt less like a goofy villain and more like a looming threat. And considering the overarching plot doesn't play too big a role in the game, he basically is driving the story. Without Oxide, well, the plot would be such a non-entity. Naughty Dog made it pretty clear that they were done with Crash and basically didn't want to try anymore. I mean, yeah, Crash Bandicoot has had some weird stories like trying to enslave the entire Earth with crystals, but turning Earth into a parking lot isn't a devious plan I would put up there as something I'd be running scared about. So the way they handled Oxide elevates the weight of the threat upon you, making it feel as if you are getting closer and closer to the ultimate race for the universe as you progress. So congratulations, Naughty Dog. The villain that you didn't want people to take seriously ended up being as iconic as the likes of Neo Cortex. But since the story only makes up a little bit of your time playing CTR, it probably doesn't mean much if it isn't supplemented by solid gameplay, which is thankfully manifested through the adventure mode.
Alright, now we're finally getting to the real meat of CTR. I can't wait. What?
Welcome to the Adventure Arena. You can travel around this area and practice your driving skills. The dots and stars on the map represent warp paths, which
Clancy
lead to
Brown,
races.
can't you,
When they flash,
talk any
it
faster
signifies they
and
are
speed it up,
open
maybe?
to play. To access a racetrack, drive onto a warp pad that has an active warp vortex,
No.
and it will take you to the track's start line.
Yeah, you all knew this was coming, but CTR basically makes you sit through these long tutorials done by Uka Uka or Aku Aku. I mean, at least put some emotion into these. Like, the fate of the world is at stake, and this is how Uka Uka is talking.
Get a TNT crate on your head. Start hopping immediately. If you react fast and hop enough times, the TNT crate.
I mean, can't Uka Uka say something along the lines of this? Ah, Cortex, you have failed me enough times. I swear that if you let this Oxide take the world domination that is rightfully ours, then you're finished. But instead, Uka Uka is a talking robot, with his lip movement being the only thing they bothered animating. And the beginning isn't the only time that he ever interrupts you. He does it a little bit in the second hub world as well in order to teach you how to do a speed boost or drift. I mean, some of these can be learned by playing the game. In fact, if you wanted to get through CTR casually, you'd do just fine not knowing any of these. But the worst part about these tutorials is that they disrupt the overall flow of the playthrough. Basically, this was my reaction every time I won a trophy.
Yes, I earned the trophies. It feels so satisfying. Wait, is he gonna speak again?
Congratulations! You win a trophy. You can get a hang time turbo from jumping.
Why did Naughty Dog put so many of these?
But I don't really put this too hard against them, mostly because after the first two hubs this becomes less frequent, and also they were gracious enough to let you just skip it at the press of a button. But these tutorials are only a dent in what is otherwise a gratifying single-player campaign mode. So CTR functions like most other car racing games. You go around a track for 3 laps while trying to come in as first. The main goal is to collect 4 trophies in order to face a boss and use their key to open a door to the next hub. However, the adventure mode features many other options that provide different rewards. The CTR tokens, for instance, require that players collect the letters C, T, and R, as well as come in as first in order to win. This encourages the player to explore around a track, considering that some of these letters are hidden into shortcuts, which forces you to use some skill in order to get them. However, this differentiates with the purple tokens, which requires you to collect 20 crystals in an arena before time runs out. And these are very challenging as you transition from just simply crystals scattered around the area to TNT crates, 2 nitro boxes laid all around the perimeter. So CTR is able to find that right balance. It's not too hard to play casually to the point that you can't get all the trophies, while still providing a good challenge for the more advanced players. Collecting enough of these tokens will allow you to unlock each of the different gem cups, in which after completion will unlock a new character. Then there are the relic races, which are basically the same as what was in the previous game, going against the clock while breaking time crates, except now you're in a cart and racing around a track. It doesn't add much as before, but it's a nice break to the racing. Collecting enough of the relics and gems will unlock 2 additional tracks, so it really shows how every collectible has a purpose and everything you do in the adventure mode is interweaved. Speaking of interweaved, the transitions between the hub areas kind of makes me think this was a precursor to Jak and Daxter. Loading times are non-existent as you go from one hub to the next, and the way the hub world theme changes where the transition is seamless. So generally speaking, CTR has a very diverse adventure mode, but all of this means nothing if the racing isn't very good. Thankfully, Naughty Dog was able to add some mechanical depth to both the tracks and the racing. This is especially manifested in the power slide boost mechanic that CTR introduces. Now, I'm not sure if CTR was really the first kart racing game to have an ability like this. Basically, it requires the player to slide while hitting the L1 button when the gauge reaches the red zone. This helps with performing shortcuts and catching up ahead of other racers. Also, it makes the races more exhilarating by speeding across a track. You go fast enough if you aren't power slide boosting. However, when you are using this neat little mechanic to the fullest, you can monumentally turn the tables in your favor, because by chaining the power slide boosts across the track, you can leave everyone else in the dust. It takes skill to pull off, though, considering you have to hit the L1 button at just the right moment to get the boost. So it is a move that requires learning and, once you've mastered it, rewards you by giving you an advantage over the other AI racers. Of course, Naughty Dog added a lot of power-ups and weapons to the tracks. You have rockets, warp vortexes, bombs, energy shields, and boosters. It's nothing too new, and Naughty Dog really didn't add anything revolutionary with these. However, one additional gimmick was the juiced up mechanic, in which collecting 10 Wumpa Fruits provides for more effective weapons, such as the missiles having the ability to home in better on targets, and a warp vortex hitting every racer instead of only the one in first place. The juiced up mechanic and the power slide boosts are icing on the cake to what is otherwise a very fast-paced racing game. Even some of the longer tracks like Cortex Castle or Oxide Station don't feel too lengthy because of how fast your kart is going. Granted, maybe different characters have different stats, but generally CTR never feels weighted or like I'm trying to drive a 200-pound man in a cart. There's a lot of satisfaction making one of those big leaps and coming down to the ground for a boost. It gives the right amount of airtime for you to feel like you're being propelled upward, while at the same time bringing you down so that it doesn't feel too terribly floaty. Generally, all these little mechanics come together to make a kart racer satisfying to play no matter what the skill level. Naughty Dog also made a number of very creative track designs to supplement the racing. While Coco Park or Ruse Tubes don't really have anything too substantial, their tracks are filled with shortcuts that force looking at the track in a different way, like how in Crash Cove there's the pirate ship you can get onto. It took me about 1,000 times to get up here as a kid. Or how about the tiny island in Papu's Pyramid, or being able to go over the signpost in Polar Pass. Again, these are little details that provide a good dose of challenge for the more adept player, but more so besides the shortcuts, the track designs themselves also lend to many different playstyles and personalities, like how in Tiny's arena there are so many little ramps to leap off of. Considering that Tiny's main strength is speed, it makes sense that his track is designed around going fast, or how Polar Pass features the bear that chased you in Crash 2 frozen in a block of ice. I can't help but wonder how she got there. Or Cortex Castle focusing on spiders to show how repulsive Cortex is.
I won't pretend I'm not arachnophobic.
Speaking of which, I played Adventure Mode as Cortex, and it was interesting. According to his stats, he's even with everything. but on stages like Cortex Castle, I had trouble making those sharp turns, which brings me to the first criticism of CTR, in which some of the characters excel in some tracks while others struggle. It is relatively minor because even with these different stats, the base adventure mode is still doable. However, when you try to do some of the side challenges, it becomes irritating. Which brings me to the Gem Cups. For some reason, one of the racers would plow ahead of everyone else, so I'd constantly be struggling to catch up ahead of them. I mean, I know that the AI is naturally supposed to be tougher when you're trying to do the side content, but look at just how close Dingodile is catching up. Damn, it felt like I was treading water in a 40-foot pool. Well, this becomes an issue when you end up with a track that your respective character isn't good at. Like, I'm doing so well as Cortex, but then you end up in Cortex Castle, which is kind of ironic since this is Cortex's home area, and then it's as if I'm trying to fight the track design while also trying to prevent Dingodile from getting ahead. It's a rather minor issue that doesn't interfere too much with the adventure mode, but I think if they were to improve this, maybe just toughen the AI instead of having one guy be the pain in the ass that constantly tails you. And then there are the bosses. So the main gimmick with each of them is that they can only attack you from behind, so all you have to do is get in front of them and they're a cakewalk. Granted, if you're stuck behind them, you'll definitely get your ass pummeled. You have Pinstripe launching bombs behind him, Komodo Joe throwing exploding TNTs, hell, Nitrous Oxide basically throws every single type of weapon, including the kitchen sink behind him. He's an extra challenge because he cheats by starting first. Not to mention, you can only stun him instead of toppling him like all the other carts. Other than that, he's the same strategy, albeit a bit more challenging since he can be harder to catch up to with his fast speed and numerous weapons. Oh yeah, did you know that Ripperoo was originally supposed to speak in these cutscenes, but instead his laughs were translated into words? So I guess whenever this guy was laughing, he was speaking. Anyway, CTR's ending is kind of nonchalant. Basically Oxide saying, "Fuck you, you still haven't collected all my time relics." Then when you beat him a second time, he leaves. All in what appears to be the same animation. Yep, Naughty Dog really was ready to be done with Crash. However, you do get these cool epilogues for each of the characters, and even a scrapbook of Naughty Dog working on the Crash Bandicoot series. I could talk about all the other features of Crash Team Racing. Tournament mode, cups, battle mode. However, I'm going to end it with a secret that most of you already know. So if you hold down L1 and R1 and press down, right, triangle, down, left, triangle, up, you unlock Penta Penguin, as most of you probably already know. Well, this was my first time experiencing Penta, and I must say, I was already aware of... However, I literally jumped when I heard extra sounds. To my knowledge, Penta Penguin was just a joke character that Sony and even Naughty Dog weren't 100% they had in. In fact, when Naughty Dog finally figured it out, words cannot describe their embarrassment. Which surprises me about Crash Team Racing's development cycle. Nothing in Crash Team Racing really describes rushed. Naughty Dog was literally at a point where they just wanted to be done with Crash. They themselves said that after Crash Bandicoot 3, they couldn't figure out how else to expand on the character. Yet, despite the fact that this was a bit of a reluctant project on Naughty Dog's part, I'm impressed that they were able to pull off something that was one of the best kart racers for PlayStation. In fact, if I didn't know anything about how certain aspects like the inclusion of Oxide were meant to spite Universal, I would have concluded that this was Naughty Dog's way of celebrating the end of their era with Crash. The adventure mode offers a good variety of content in the main campaign, while the racing is also very skill-oriented and functional with a sense of speed. It finds that sweet spot to the most seasoned and casual of players. Seriously, Naughty Dog packed Crash Team Racing to the brim. They knew that this was going to be their last time with Crash, so they put in their all for the final celebration. Quite a celebration it was. For the aftermath, well, let's just say I'll get to it.
Okay, I think I can do this. I don't think any more touches are necessary. I think I can do this. Alright, Naughty Dog wants to introduce a new racing game. What do you guys think? I think there could be some potential in this new racing game, and, you never know what you could do once you expand your horizons. And, I'm totally open to change, and I'm glad that they're doing something that's not related to Crash, and, it could be something big. Yes.
Anyway, CTR's ending is kind of nonchalant. I can't help but feel like Naughty Dog wasn't even trying with some of these. It's basically not.
Alright, on we go with the adventure mode. Collecting those trophies, those CTR tokens, those relics, going at full speed, and